Hello, everyone. We are live. I'm thrilled to be here with you today on this glorious Thursday. I've just had to double check that it is Thursday. Yes, it's Thursday. Yeah, no, great to be coming at you live. We've got some exciting presentations to kind of go through some research. You may have seen through the media, through various things, that Aikido released the State of AI in Security and Development report. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to go through this report, obviously, and the obvious person to help us navigate this is the person that put it together, that conducted that research, Siraj Shah. So, Siraj, welcome so much to the show.
Thanks for having me.
But I also wanted to bring on a little bit of a, not so much of a counter voice, but someone that can help kind of explain it from an outside point of view, um, which is Walt de Bons. So, Walt, welcome. Thanks so much for the show. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
being here.
yeah. Glad to be here.
And why this is kind of an interesting mix up is Walt has a history of pen testing, which is ethical hacking. He's big in the industry, and he also is kind of a front leader in what we kind of call AI pen testing or AI hacking. So it's going to be very interesting to listen to the perspective of Siraj as to what he found when he was doing this report, conducting the research, and then also to kind of see how this applies in the real world, in reality, with Walt. So very fascinating. I hope you all kind of enjoy this going going up. So let's start off. There's a few different points in the report that we have, um, but kind of there's a few main ones that I guess that we can touch on. But for me, what really stood out is that 1 in 5 organizations have really suffered a serious incident that was linked to AI generated code. So 69% of organizations uncovered vulnerabilities because of AI generated code, and 1 in 5 suffered kind of a serious incident. What I'm kind of curious is what's behind this kind of this result. Is it speed? Is it a lack of kind of oversight? Is it something else? What did you kind of find here, Siraj?
Yeah, I think what's interesting with this is the fact that there is a direct link between serious incidents and actual use of AI generated code. And I think what we found is that this doesn't just these stats aren't just relevant for the complete audience of CISOs, app sec engineers, and developers. It was also when you looked at the subset of audiences. So CISOs alone also had this kind of proportion of serious incidents, or they reported this kind of number of serious incidents. And in terms of your question of what's actually happening, I guess it's like everything in tech in terms of when something new comes along, we end up adopting it first and then working out the security later, right? So bring your own device a long time ago. Shadow IT is a constant issue, a constant problem. And yeah, I think that's kind of reflected in the data that we're still playing catch up.
Now, while I kind of wanted to kind of throw this over to you, is first of all, like, did this surprise you? And then, kind of out there in the wild, does this kind of match up with what you're seeing? Because I think that a lot of people kind of assume that AI generated code is more secure than humans. There's something called AI bias, which is basically like I will trust AI more than I trust myself. But like, what do you make of this? And does this translate to kind of what you've been seeing out there in the wild in the real world?
hmm Definitely, it's definitely something that I've seen also as a pen tester. The like with the whole AI coding movement is all about going even faster than we could. But even before that, we went fast, and because to go fast, we kind of ignored security, and now we go even faster and we ignore security even more. And the problem is also like the algorithms that we use, like the LLMs, they have been trained on data that's on the internet. But like if you look at sources like GitHub, they're full of mostly insecure code. So those kind of models, they're trained on insecure code. And yeah, you can't expect if you put insecure code into an algorithm that it will suddenly magically also get like secure code out of it. So I think these are like two elements that really reinforce this.
Yeah, definitely. Let's kind of dive into some of this about kind of the security of AI generated code. Um, because there is something else that's interesting in here, and that is that this belief that we're going to get basically, secure AI generated codes. Because 96 believe that AI will write secure, reliable code. Now, what I can tell you from my own experience and from various things, that we're not there yet. we're not at writing secure and reliable code. But so I guess, like, let's start off with you, Suraj, to understand this. 96% it will happen, but only 21% will think it will happen without humans. So a big part of people think it will happen, but there will need to be some kind of role in AI. But that 21% is still surprisingly low. What do you reckon this tells us about, like, how teams envision the role of AI in the future, and the impact that's kind of having?
I think a lot of it is right now where it's about slowly gaining that trust. The more you use AI, the more you may be getting that trust. But also, if you're seeing these vulnerabilities in the wild, if you're actually spotting them and they're causing incidents, then that's going to push you back a step or two, right? To believe that there's going to be a time when AI generated code is going to be completely secure. It kind of goes to show that we've still got a long way to go. And what we found in the data is that a lot of this depends on the team. So teams that teams that are remediating within 24 hours compared to teams that are remediating a lot slower have a very different outlook on the kind of their confidence levels in AI, and that's probably as a result of using AI in other ways. So in terms of fixing vulnerabilities, in terms of triaging with AI, if you're using those and you're being able to remediate quicker, you're essentially making that code more secure faster. So there may be more confidence growing on the other side of actually securing that code, rather than the generated code itself being secure. But humans, our data also shows that humans will be needed for other things. So in terms of secure design, secure architecture, and business logic, those are the three main things that I kind of pointed out.
That's really interesting. I kind of want to follow up on that a little bit. So, from what I understand of what you just said, that kind of means that perhaps the direct output from the LLMs may be insecure, but everything that surrounds that, the tools that surround it, the added context that we can give, everything kind of almost helps kind of create this idea of that it is secure. So is that kind of what I'm reading into here? That it's kind of more than just the direct output. It's actually everything around that in detection and security that give people confidence.
I think so. I think that's where people are kind of get that confidence of there will still, and that's why there's still a low number or low proportion of people who say that there will be completely secure code without human oversight, because humans will be needed either in the use or kind of management of those tools to fix, or to remediate quicker, or to triage quicker. Whether they're using AI or not in those, they'll still need people to manage those tools, and they'll be needed in terms of the business logic, in terms of the architecture, the design, everything that goes on from the outset.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna put you on the spot then, Siraj, and then I'll come over to you. What's your view? Are you in the 21% that think that it won't happen without human insight, or are you in the 19% that think that AI is just going to get there on their own? So, quick fireside on the spot, no preparation. Give us your opinion.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for that. I would say I think it will get very close, but I still think there'll be an element of human necessity. And I don't know it might not be all of those parts. So those parts I mentioned there in terms of design, architecture, business logic, I reckon the business logic will be the last to come, where you will still need someone there. And in terms of AI generated code, it will become secure, like straight from the source. But as well mentioned before, like it's being trained, you're using the data that you're training on right now isn't the most secure in the first place. So it may take a long time to get that data set to be a secure data set in the first instance. So let's see how and when that can happen.
There's a little bit of insight into that is that when just before we went on live, Siraj was saying that I was throwing questions to him in a different interview I did that he had prepared for. So I just decided I'd keep up the trend and continue to do it.
Yeah.
So, well, your turn now. Look
Thanks
out.
for that. Yeah.
But well, I want to kind of get your idea of a hacker. Now, you have two kind of like views from this. You have one is the perspective of a pen tester of a hacker. You also have someone that's very deeply involved in AI. So do you kind of share this optimistic view? Like, let's start there. Do you share this view that we are going to get like very reliable, very secure code with or without humans? Do you think that we're going to get there, or do you think that that there's always going to be inherent flaws in this based on what you had previously said?
I definitely think we will get there, and sooner than later, actually. Because like from what we see, what we are working on right now, like it's almost already there. And, we're getting really close to it. And, I do see it like we will get to it like 98% of like the code will be completely secured by AI, but there is always like this human element who will still like be able to tweak in that last 2% where like a different kind of thought pattern, a human that just like wired a little bit different and thought about something in a different way, and then just found like a creative exploit that AI would not have been able to come up on itself. But these kind of instances, there will be so little that I think for 99% of the companies purely relying on AI for getting the security done will be sufficient, I think.
And do you think and how do you imagine that we end up here? Because it's always difficult to talk about AI because we kind of talk about it, and at this point we're kind of using it in the terms of generative AI and specifically code generative AI. But we could be thinking about it like more holistically. So do you think that like direct from the source code generated AI is going to be secure? Or do you think that there might be kind of elements, stages, if you will, in this, that the end result is secure, but let's say it goes through some kind of pipeline through a very like serious, how do you think that looks? Or is the model itself just going to produce highly qualified, secure, reliable code?
I think it's definitely like Suraj thinks like it's gonna get better. The models are going to by default put out more secure code, but they have just been trained on too much shitty code, let's say, to like yeah, it's almost impossible to magically transform this. So I do think like most of the security improvements and to like close the gap will all come from like additional systems that come on top of it. For example, like right now we're working very hard on the AI pen testing side of things, and if we can have like this loop of we generate code, we pen test it like deeply, we immediately provide a patch, we test it immediately to see if it's fixed or not, and by going in this loop we can already filter out like 95% of the vulnerabilities that would be in there, and it's all going to be in an automated fashion. So on itself, I would say no, but like in this bigger loop of things, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's just on my personal take too. Like I think there's certain things that we will be able to get out. Like my biggest gripe of all time is that 1998 we invented this term called SQL injection. That same exact year that we invented it, we invented the solution for SQL injection, which has not changed in almost 30 years, right? Parameterized statement, parameterization, but we still can't seem to get it right. Like I'm hopeful that these types of things, at least the AI model will just be able to train itself out of it. But I guess we'll find that when we get there. Let's move on to a little bit of a blame game here, because there's an interesting challenge that we have, and this is the interesting challenge that we have, and it's something that the survey found out. The challenge is this: is that when we're using generative AI and it's insecure, who do we blame? Because you could easily blame the developer, but the developer didn't really write the code. So is it the person that checked it, or is it the security team that sits on top of that that's meant to be analyzing this? Is it leadership? So Suraj, this is a question that has no answer, as we found out. But can you talk us through kind of like what we found and why is there this confusion around like who's responsible ultimately?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting as well is again with this, with the data that we have, with three different sets of kind of audiences or respondents. The interesting thing was, and Andy Borer, who's quoted here, a CISO from Rothesay, he actually asked me when I asked him initially, what did you think of this stat? He actually asked me, okay, can you give me more of the data set? Like, I want to see what developers said, I want to see what AppSec engineers said, and I want to see what CISOs said. And again, there was still this variation. So I don't think anyone is clear in any of their roles who is to blame. They kind of spreading that blame or spreading, because they could technically pick more than one answer, and um, and that's going to leave enterprises, organizations of any size, with a big issue, because they need to put together some sort of framework, some sort of governance framework to identify, okay, if this happens in this instance, how what would happen kind of retrospectively in terms of who's to blame. I think a lot of the time the CISO is always the person on the chopping block for things like this. It doesn't matter the type of incident they are, and it's kind of like now become their thing, right? It's like we'll take the hit because we're a CISO, and it's not really a fair way to play it, but it's kind of seems to be the way it has gone. I think what needs to happen is probably organizations thinking more proactively and not thinking, okay, what happens when a breach happens? If is it linked to AI code? It's more, how do we identify that we're doing all of our kind of utmost to make sure that AI is being tracked. We're using it effectively. We're using it securely. All of our processes are in place in terms of production readiness. All of the things are there to make sure we've done the right things in terms of our due diligence. And I think that will be more important.
Yeah, and it's interesting as what you say there, like the CISO almost be like a sacrificial lamb in these times.
Yeah.
And we kind of need to get away from it. The best panel that I ever seen in my life. This is a little bit of a side quest, but I'm started it, so we're going to continue. But the best panel that I saw, it was in 2021, and it was with the CISO of SolarWinds. So those that don't remember, SolarWinds had this massive breach. It was a kind of a government-used software, so it had big. And the first panel, the very first question off that panel was, "Why weren't you fired?" And his response was amazing, but it just kind of led to see that that actually there is this kind of like automatic blame system that we have always had in security. It's not new to AI. It's always been there. And it's kind of like something goes wrong, we need to fire someone, we need to blame someone, because then people know that we're doing something. But his response, and what I believe, is that, well, he's the last person in the world that should be fired, because because even if he's terrible at his job, he still knows more about it right now in a crisis than anyone else. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and it kind of touched on it there. And we need to change our mindset. And maybe AI is the thing that actually does it, because the blame game isn't so clear. Well, I'm going to kind of move over to you. Who's to blame? No, I won't ask you that. That's a great question. But like for someone that's kind of building these like pen test systems, like what do you see as the line of accountability being in there? How do you see that as being clear or unclear? And kind of how would you kind of describe that? As someone that's kind of embedded in these systems that are being built out. Easy question.
Super easy. Yeah, the thing is, I don't have like a very ready-made answer for this one. Especially like I think with AI coming in and doing like the grunt of the security work, it makes accountability even more hazier. Because yeah, in the end, personally, I think security is a responsibility of everyone in the organization. It's a responsibility of the CISO to make sure there is a process in place. There is a responsibility for the developer to actually care about security and fix vulnerabilities when it comes to them. And AI in this whole process, to me, is not the one to blame, but it's the one tool that will actually facilitate this process to surface vulnerabilities if they would come up, and then actually like have those like ready and like free up the developers as well, just to make their life easier, and also for the CISOs, so that like 99 of 95% is already fixed automatically. But that, yeah, they can all keep going. I don't really have an answer for this. Like, but for me, yeah, blaming AI is not going to do it. You still need to make security an everyone problem.
Yeah, because I guess that's the other thing that's it's like now there is a new villain. It's AI. It's GPT-4's fault. It's GPT-5. So we have a different sacrificial lamb. But I think your response, while saying that actually you don't have an answer, what the report clearly shows is no one does. Like because it's just no one really knows, and so I think that's very clear, kind of clear in it. Um, the let's kind of go on to kind of an area, Walt, that you're very familiar with, which is pen testing, and this is kind of this is very interesting. So, Walt, I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off with you. Kind of the first question I have is maybe can you explain pen testing very briefly, why it's important and what's its kind of like typical role, and then we'll get back to what the research actually found about kind of pen testing. So maybe kind of traditional pen testing. Let's start there, and then we'll get into what AI pen testing is.
Alrighty. So pen testing is basically what you would do to like let a hacker first allow them and pay them to find the vulnerability holes in your environment, so that you have like this prioritized list of what do I actually need to fix first, because these are the holes hackers could already use to get in. And then you have like all the security tools that all surface could be issues, but the ones that are the most important ones will always be the ones in the pen testing report, because those have been used like first. So that is like pen testing. Basically, it's like the quickest way to know how secure you are is by actually getting yourself into the fire and letting a hacker look at your environment. Yeah. And then, so that is pen testing as a whole, and up until now, it's always been done by humans, just because there have been a lot of products who called themselves like automated pen testing, autonomous pen testing, but they never really did the trick. But now with agentic AI coming up, we actually have like this amazing technology that actually can reason and make decisions just like a human would. So if you like create the system around it in the correct way, you can actually make a full like simulation basically in AI of how a human would do the pen test, but then just completely automated. And it's actually also like what we're doing at Aikido now with our team. We are building this out, and the results are just insane. Like yeah, I don't know if I can already like yeah, I will just get it out. So what we did is we started like last week a couple of side by side comparisons with like human pen tests, and just see like our initial take was, okay, how far behind in the human pen test are we? And when we did the side by side comparisons, like to our own astonishment, we did not lag behind, but we were actually further on. We found more vulnerabilities, more different kind of vulnerabilities than the human pen test. So this for me actually blew my mind. So for all the CISOs out there, we think like that AI is going to take over penetration testing. It's happening. It's not in a couple of years. It's not in 5.5 years. No, it's already going. Uh, yeah, like if you would have asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said, oh yeah, it's gonna take a year, but I never would have imagined that we already would be at this point.
So we're basically already here, and I can say we're there's going to be some pretty astonishing reports that we're rating. Um, and one of the areas that you'll see is coming out is we have to wait until we've reported the vulnerabilities and they've been fixed. But there is a lot of vulnerabilities that we've discovered. But Siraj, I want to kind of took on you turn to you a little bit now, because one of the other interesting elements of this is that 97% said that they would actually kind of consider AI pen testing. I want to start with this number. Actually surprised me. The reason why this number surprised me is because I didn't think so many people would be already there. I thought that we were going to have to prove the market more.
Yeah.
So I guess, was this surprising to you? Why do you think this number was so high? And who are these 3% that are lagging behind?
I think it was initially surprising to me as well, but when you think about it, and a lot of the stuff that the team is working on, and the reason that behind it is, people are fed up with waiting so long, with spending so much, with having to organize all of this, like a lot of admin involved. The 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 sheer kind of effort, um, and kind of scale of things on that side, it's all resource intensive essentially. The idea of that kind of makes it clearer why people would consider it, right? And then the actual question of validation, on this slide, around, what do you need to actually prove it, prove that AI. And then that's kind of what Wout is talking about there, which is great to hear that human human testers versus the AI testers, and seeing that already playing out in the way that AI is kind of coming up on top, is really interesting, because that's the number one, by quite far. I think 60% of respondents said that that's what they would need, in order to really, confirm that, okay, we'll use an AI pen testing solution. So yeah, it looks like that's going to be playing out over this next year, where people realize, okay, maybe this whole reliance on human pen testers isn't as required as much as we thought it would. And also, I guess the other reason that there might be that side to side comparison is because a lot of the time they've been burned before, when automated pen testing was kind of launched as a separate kind of thing, which people thought would mean kind of AI style automation, but really was just scanning, and not going deep in depth like a human tester would. And I think that's where the difference is now. When you're using agentic AI, you're actually seeing that kind of difference.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree I agree with that. And to me, as someone that's in it makes sense, right? I believe in AI pen testing. I still think it's a good sign, that the industry is definitely kind of keeping up. I want to move on to the part that did surprise me the most. Well, I it kind of makes sense, but there's this page in the report that's kind of that correlates that security tool sprawl correlates with more incidents. So let's start off with, what's security tool sprawl? It's a bit of a tongue twister. Say that 3 times. Let's start off with what that is, and then kind of what this data shows, why it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, looking at, and we're just to make it clearer as well. What we were asking for was whether or not, the number of vendors, so different vendor tools used in each kind of case. So a different vendor for SaaS, a different vendor for DAST, etc. And whether that would correlate with higher incident rates, higher remediation, slower remediation times, more time triaging, more false positives to deal with. And in all the cases, there was a clear line indicating that actually, yes, that was the case. The more vendors you use, and um, I guess the idea from a CISO, especially maybe larger organizations, is, well, we need the best of breed for each particular solution. But often that means that you're lacking some of that kind of integration. You're lacking that kind of context that you would get, and I think that's where you're seeing that rising kind of incident rate, because you're having slower remediation times. You're seeing more alerts. Everything kind of makes sense when it's packaged together like that, right? You know, they all kind of have a knock-on effect.
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of it is interesting from the perspective that like what it clearly shows is like more is not more, or at least when
Mm.
it comes to kind of like different areas. How do you think AI kind of plays into this? Like, like, let me rephrase that. Why is integration like at this such a weak point? Like, why is it that there's when you have these different vendor tools going on that we get this result?
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time, one tool will show, flag a vulnerability, and another tool will flag a misconfiguration, for example. And there's no way of knowing whether the two are related, connected, or whether they even matter in that same context. So I think, and then the kind of third step is whether they should be prioritized or not. Whether how much they should be prioritized. So those three things, not having that kind of clear visibility, is less about integration, I guess. It's more about visibility. The lack of visibility is what is causing this kind of issue.
Yeah. And now, what I kind of want to catch up with you on this. This is a purely selfish question, and I've managed to fit it in here because I wanted to ask it, but it is a little bit left of field. And this because this got me curious, and I was thinking to myself, do we see the same phenomenon on an offensive side? In the sense that when you're doing a penetration test, I'm sure there's people out there that want to use every single tool available to them and everything. Is it something similar on the offensive side that like the more tools you use, the kind of is it more effective? Is it less effective? Is it the same? Like how does that work? And I'm going to be completely frank with everyone listening. This is kind of less to do with the report and more to do with my own curiosity. But I'm hosting this, so you're going to have to indulge me.
All right. um, yeah, like from a hacker perspective, I definitely think there's a balance. So yeah, you can have like every single tool in your use box, but if you can't use them effectively, it's basically worthless, right? But I do see like the better hackers that I've worked with. They all had quite several tools, but they knew like very specifically. Well, they had a lot of tools in their arsenal, but each tool had like this one very specific purpose and a very specific scenario that they used it. And just following along with them, seeing them how they used those tools was a really learnful. Like it was for me like very a learnful experience. But yeah, we definitely also see like the other side of the spectrum where you have like script kiddies, so like how we call like beginner hackers, who like yeah, like the kids, they just have a lot of tools at their disposal, but they don't really know what to do with them. So those are script kiddies. uh, yeah, just having a lot of tools doesn't really make it work. But yeah, so there is definitely like a very good balance to strike there. But I do think with like the future coming up, all these tools, they have the purpose of automating certain tasks and then getting the results to the human pen tester, and then using the results in the follow-up context. But I do think like with the AI being able right now to automate the complete attack, that a lot of those tools will just not be necessary anymore. The AI will already do like the grunt of the work, will do the full pen test, and then it will be up to the human to really see, okay, where can I still make the difference? The humans are a lot more creative than the AI can be. So like if the humans then can yeah, they probably have to like switch out move like all of their tools out of the window, and then focus on like just yeah, we mostly use burp suite for this, but just use on this one tool and use it very well in order to like do a lot of the manual stuff. So yeah, more tools in the future will not necessarily make you a better hacker.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always curious about that because I mean, partly because I'm kind of a script kiddie, like that. I'm just a very old one. so, so like that, and this kind of has been my experience. Um, we're running out of time, so I need to kind of step it up a little bit. But one of the other interesting areas in the report, and I would like to say, because there was a question earlier on this, is will the slides be available? The whole report is available to download. You can, I'll put it in the chat at the end where it is. But we noticed also regional differences between Europe and the US, and that Europe is lagging a little bit behind. So Raj, do you want to just kind of touch on what we discovered here, and maybe like a little bit why are we lagging? I say we because I'm in Europe, but why are we lagging behind the US?
Yeah, so in some ways, Europe is seeing less serious attacks, or fewer proportion of European organizations are seeing serious attacks compared to the US, and that may be because of the kind of regulation and the kind of cautiousness of EU organizations. But on the flip side, they're also seeing more near misses. So that means that they might be seeing things earlier on. Maybe they're spending more time in terms of remediation, in terms of going through things thoroughly, because of that cautious nature, and therefore nothing serious happens as a result. But there is also an element of, like, we could also turn that on its head and say the US is kind of far out, according to our data, ahead in terms of AI adoption. So that means they're ahead of Europe in terms of the amount of AI code in production, the amount that they're tracking AI code, and also the amount of vulnerabilities they're seeing from AI in their code. And that all again links. It's kind of that domino effect. The more you're actually tracking, the more you're going to find, right? But it also kind of goes to show that maybe Europe is a little bit more cautious on adopting AI, and therefore, US is probably in front, as it is a lot of the time with tech, in terms of innovation and actually using AI and gaining those benefits from it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm not going to ask you to follow up on this because we've actually got some questions coming in. They're quite difficult questions. But here from Kristen Arenas has asked here that how much do you think that this is going to affect entry level roles in security? So, for example, when you enter in a security role, you're often an analyst in a SOC, areas like that. So, Walt, I'm gonna refer over to you for this one here. Another very easy question for you to answer today. So you get all the failed at the easy ones. But what do you see as someone that's working on these agentic systems that knows deeply how they work and potentially where they feel, how's this going to affect entry level security jobs? And we won't hold you accountable for if the answer is it's going to cause a lot of chaos.
Yeah, I think like agentic AI is going to bring a similar wave as it had to, for example, the graphic design industry. The You will still be able to be relevant as a security expert. That will always be the case, but the way your job will change will be a lot. And also, for you to remain relevant, the gap for you from a junior position to like actually someone who is relevant within the industry will be higher, because you always have to like be able to give that edge that AI can't give yet. So I think like this gap, like to overcome the AI, will always get bigger. Uh, so yeah, it's gonna be tougher for juniors to actually find like a relevant spot. I think in within it's gonna take a lot more time and effort from juniors to actually get this relevance within the industry.
Yep, that was a depressing answer that I thought it was going to be. So Raj, do you have anything to add to that?
I think there's just probably a bit of like caution for that, if that were to happen, which it may well could, right? Is when you if you're not hiring as many of those junior developers, then you lose a lot of that kind of balance as people get more senior in the organization. Your reliance on AI is going to be tenfold, right? Essentially, and that reliance then means you lose a lot of that kind of internal knowledge, that kind of that kind of maybe IP or something special about your organization that can set it apart, that creativity and kind of what developers can build. And I think that will start hitting organizations afterwards. So we may well see that initially. Okay, let's just cut our, the way that tech companies are cutting developers, fine. And then there may be another wave where it's like, okay, now we need developers. Maybe they're not, maybe they're junior developers, but they need to learn some in a completely different way to what junior developers have learned so far. So like the way they use the AI tools will be completely different. The way they manage AI to both fix vulnerabilities, as well as in terms of using AI generated code, all of those things will be a completely different kind of ball game.
Yeah, that's a good, a slightly less
Yeah.
slightly less depressing answer. Another very easy question. This one, Walt, is I think born for you. Is we've seen some kind of red test agentic red teams. Test kind of expose credentials, create downtime, make unauthorized changes. So basically, kind of when you do a pen test, for those who don't know, you typically follow a strict set of rules that what you do and you don't do when you're trying to find this. So this question kind of comes from the fact that you've seen red teams kind of explore beyond that. When can we start trusting that? And I guess what can we do to also help in that process?
Yeah, I definitely think like this is one of the responsibilities of the vendors as well, like who build these kind of systems. For example, for us, we also spend a lot of time just designing how we set everything up, just to make sure that by design, the agents cannot do these kind of things. So for us, for example, really like we spend a lot of time engineering on the on making sure that the agents can only access the scope and then some extra URLs, but that they cannot access anything outside of that. So that if they would, for example, suddenly start like leaking credentials to an external domain, that they just physically cannot do this. So a lot of this happens like around secure by design, I think. So this is really a responsibility for the vendors.
Yeah, definitely. I think we could. Well, look, we've come to the end. We've run out of time. I really want to thank both Walt and Siraj for coming on here. Now, we did get a couple of questions that will the report or will the slides be available? You don't need the slides because the full report is available. It's in the chat right now. It has all the key findings. It can go into deep analysis. We've got great quotes. It's really good. So Siraj, and a special thanks for you for doing this research. It was actually quite a mammoth task for someone that kind of saw it on the back end. So thanks for that. Walt, thanks here for adding your input and being so cheery and optimistic about the future for junior security people listening. we really appreciate it, mate. And make sure you stay tuned to see future webinars that we're going to do on the topic. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Walt. Thanks, Siraj, and we'll see you all on the next webinar.
Thank you.
Cheers.